All right. So what is this? What is this whole chart? Well, it's my elemental psychology chart. So let me try and explain. It all started when I'm in my counseling training program and I'm trying to develop my own sort of integrative counseling technique. And I came across this set of axes, which is insight versus action, internal versus external. And I thought this was really helpful when kind of classifying. As you can see, I kind of just threw some together. This isn't perfect, and quite honestly, most therapies cover a lot, but some tend to focus on one aspect over the other. For example, reality therapy is very action oriented, as opposed to something like psychodynamic, which is very much insight oriented. Mindfulness is more kind of internal regulating, where assertiveness training would be more external actions. And so I started with this, and I kind of just had the intuitive connection to put. It all started with insight being the air element, action being earth, internal being the water, and then our external being the fire. And then I thought, mind, body, heart, spirit, to kind of abstract it or pull out a philosophical root from it. And so from that, I kind of ascribe sort of a balancing mechanic to it, whereas our soul sort of exists somewhere in the middle. And so this is what's born from all of from there on out. This is what I've came up with. And so I want to try and break this down for you. We'll kind of start in the middle, maybe work our way out, and it might be easier for me to kind of talk through some random examples and to show you kind of how this cycle in this diagram is supposed to work. And so in the middle, we have our soul and our shadow. And so at the heart of this kind of theory is that we all have a soul that is natural, secure, balanced, creative, and capable of flourishing. And we also have a shadow aspect of us that is vulnerable, rejected, potentially has trauma or shame. And and so we each possess the capability to virtuously express our soul and viciously protect our shadow. And so that's kind of the internal working model, and it's some of it is inspired from the theory of internal family systems. I've kind of borrowed some of the shadow soul work from that. And so of course we have our mind, body, heart and spirit from there, which I've of course like I mentioned I extrapolated. The mind is kind of like our air part, our air element. Our body is our earth. Um, our water element is our heart, and our fire element is our spirit. And so we're going to ignore sort of these four terms right now, but as we go along, you'll see in these words, these are what I identified as therapeutic activities that are somewhat universal and they align with the element, the part associated with mind, body, heart, or spirit. So for body, we have organizing and movement. Organizing could mean organizing your room. It could be organizing your thoughts. It could be getting your diet in order, your sleep. Um, Movement, of course, that's pretty self-explanatory, but I think that's a inherent activity that's integral to our well-being. And then we have expression and adventure, which are the fireside activities. And I think that's, as you'll see, these become integral to who we are if we want to virtuously, express our spirit. Um, Moving on, we have recreation and learning, and that's the activities associated with the mind. And then we have connecting and reflecting, which are for our heart. And so, kind of moving out a little bit further towards the outer edge here, I want to focus on these circles on the white, green, blue, and red. And so we have transcendence and integrity, will and love. And so these are the two axes which I have sort of abstracted out again from this, which is the best possible insight is to be able to transcend issues. The best type of action is ones that are integrous to our to our body, to our being. Uh, Internal love and external will, in that not only do we need to love ourselves internally, but we also need to be able to cultivate an internal sense to love other things. And once you realize that we all have this within ourselves, that's where that comes from. And then of course externally is our that addresses our ability to have choice, to have agency, and to express our presence in the world. And so that's where we have these sort of principalities, is what I call them, or aspects. And so the fire part is our will, the air part is our transcendence, the water part is love, and the earth part is our integrity. And so you can think of it like too much transcendence will lead to escapism. Too much integrity without transcending will lead to corruption. Too much love without our will can lead to enmeshment. And too much will without enough love can lead to domineering. And so keep the colors in mind, because I tried to color code things here, and uh, the words in dark are associated with our shadow. And so this is where the model starts to come together, so we can start to identify why we might be acting the way we are. For somebody who maybe their water part is diminished and their fire part is expanded, they're more apt to be domineering. Why might they be doing that? Because they're protecting a vulnerable part of their shadow. And if we search for why, that might be because as a child, when they tried to express their love or where they needed support from their heart, it wasn't there. And so they've learned to just rely on their own will to get their needs met. That's just one sort of example off the top of my head, but so those are the four axes, the internal axes, and then I've also extrapolated it even further and added two more sets of axes, which is chaos, order, realization, and actualization. And I tried to make the positioning matter here. So to address the chaos, the principality of chaos in our existence, it seems that we need our spirit and our mind to healthily approach chaos, and that is our will and transcendence. That's what's going to be able to have us successfully approach and integrate and balance the aspect of chaos. For true realizations happens with the mixture of transcendence and love. To properly deal with the principality of order, we also need love and integrity. Finally, to properly deal with the principality of actualization, we need our will and integrity. And so balancing realizations with actualizations, chaos and order, using the four elemental parts, uh, that's that's sort of this working model, and that's where that's where these different and that's where these different parts will come into play here, and I'll get into that in just a sec. But you'll see around these circles are some different words, and so for example, in the air part, we have wisdom, insight, humor, perspective, and curiosity. And those are what I've identified as positive character traits to cultivate transcendence. Okay, and that applies to all four of the elements. For will, you want to cultivate a sense of courage, zest, conviction, persistence, and bravery. Love, we want compassion, mercy, appreciation, altruism, and empathy. And then, of course, for integrity, we want prudence, patience, self control, intuition, and temperance. And so you'll see on the outside I have some other terms which are more tasks of how to approach the principality within the circle. So for chaos, it's going to be risk taking, creativity, developing a vision, exploring, taking leaps of faith. And all of that's going to be possible with these character traits and having those in balance. For order, it's going to be ethics, relationships, negotiations, systems, recording. That's going to be the proper task to approach order. For realization, it's going to be observations, cultivating awareness, discoveries, epiphanies. Um, but you need to balance those tasks with behaviors, choices, methods, and achievements. Okay, so I'm hoping you can start to see how this diagram is meant to be positionally accurate, like so things that are adjacent matter, but also things that are opposite matter. So you can't we can cultivate all the self-awareness we want, and I sometimes see this in clients that say, I'm very self-aware, I've been to therapy a lot, I've talked about my situation a lot, but they're not balancing those realizations with actualizations, and so that's where I'm trying to address those dichotomies with this model. Uh, of course, on the outside, I've tried to see. So, okay, so there's four quests, we'll say. There's four quests or archetypal quests that I've sort of boiled down to that we all are trying to cycle through, and that's how we develop. The first quest is the call to adventure, and that's you can kind of think of that as like the hero archetype. The mantra would be nothing ventured, nothing gained, and the key task would be to slay the dragon. Okay, and as I go through these quests, think about them on a micro level and a macro level. Okay, you can kind of apply this diagram to your everyday. So slaying the dragon might be just getting out of bed and making your bed and making sure you get water. That might be the slaying the dragon for that day. But we want to keep in mind that we tend to, at any given time, we're in one of these quests or we're motivated by one of these quests. Okay, and the what you'll see, what I'm trying to communicate at the end is go cycling through these quests is how we develop and flourish through our existence. And problems from our principalities or the quests themselves can stunt our development. And that's sort of the kind of working model in a nutshell here. So the hero or the call to adventure quest is primarily motivated by the fire part in us. Uh, the next one is the search for knowledge, and that is characterized by the sage archetype. And the mantra is truth whispers in questions, not answers. And the key task for this quest is uncovering the truth. The key task for this quest is uncovering the truth. Okay, and so again, keep in mind that while this quest primarily is associated with the air part of us, it's also exists in between love and transcendence, and so that's just important to keep in mind. Um, the hero motivates, the sage overcomes, and then we have our third quest, which is the return of harmony. The mantra for that is peace flows where harmony grows. And the key task for this quest is repairing the damage. And again, you can think of this on a micro level, repairing relationships, repairing our mind, repairing our bodies. Uh, it can kind of be, you can kind of apply this for anything, but the 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 essence of the quest, I think, is an integral one. It's one of the four integral ones, and so that leads us to our last uh, quest, which is the leaving of legacy, and that is characterized by the builder archetype. And the mantra for that is a quote from Aristotle, which I love. Is excellence then is not an act but a habit. And the key task for this quest is going to be cultivating the garden. And so on the outside, you see these little. I try to make it kind of visually clear. The fire part motivates us. The air part helps us overcome. The water part helps us purify ourselves, our emotions, our minds, and the earth part helps us become. And so, as you can again remember, overcoming and becoming, motivating and purifying. Those are sort of, again, another set of dichotomies that I've set up. Uh, Oftentimes, people come to therapy because they haven't purified their they haven't purified themselves from their past experiences. They've developed certain legacies that are causing them problems with their relationships or with their with other symptoms. And so knowing what you need, where you're stuck, that's the main idea of this diagram. And so if I had to paint sort of an ideal scenario, we start out as the young hero, the call to adventure. Life is very new, it's very chaos driven, and if it's properly balanced with order, not too much chaos, we're able to venture out and we're able to gain. We're able to slay the dragon that furthers our development. And then as we develop more agency, we start to realize that life has there's a lot to learn in life, and so we have this thirst for knowledge, and uh, that is a motivating factor. And if we're able to again balance our realizations with our actualizations, we can keep getting better and better realizations. And so that's part of the cyclical nature of this sort of diagram. I hope that kind of makes sense. And I wanted to jump to the sidebars here too, which I think are important. And these are on the left here. They are different existential dispositions. And so this was inspired by actually I believe is a YouTube video. I don't even remember the channel. Um, it was a one-off video that I happened to watch from it, but he brought up he made some interesting points about existential dispositions and how we relate to our existence and how we view our relationship to the world essentially. And so I've sort of mapped out a series of different dispositions, and I'm sure there's many more. And these are some of the important ones that I've developed here and what I've seen just from my experience. We have the prisoner at the bottom, the disposition of a tragedy, enduring, romance, comedy, journey, and then miracle. And I want you to keep in mind the color coding here. Enduring is related to the earth type in that That might be a disposition where you're not necessarily thriving, but you're in it. You're grinding away, you're doing the thing. Romance has to do with love. Comedy has to do with our air type, being able to transcend with insight, humor, perspective, curiosity. The disposition of the hero's journey, of course, is the fire type with the will. And then ideally, in an ideal world, we all can get to an existential disposition of life being a miracle, and the fact that we have a mind, body, heart, and spirit, and a soul, and even we're able to integrate all of these into a higher level position, uh, in our a higher level position in our perceived stance in the world, I guess. That's a kind of a weird way to say it, but and so with this diagram, what I envision is, helping clients with by developing, integrative counseling, uh, an integrative counseling approach. I can sort of try and, place this onto this and develop a true integrative approach that, taking from strategies that will help them depending on where they are or what cycles they need to go through. Because for some people, psychodynamic, the search for knowledge, that might not be what they need. Uh, they might be needing behavioral therapy, exposure therapy, which would be on this other opposite side of the quadrant. And so this is maybe sort of an artistic or a more abstract way for me to conceptualize deploying different techniques or drawing from different theories depending on where they might be on their elemental psychology sort of journey here. And so also along with this chart is, depending on your disposition, that's going to generate certain beliefs, which is going to generate certain thoughts, which is going to influence and shape our emotions, which is going to ultimately dictate, or not dictate, but influence our behavior. And so, a prisoner is going to have a different belief set than somebody who's in the comedy disposition. Okay, and so helping people move up from feeling like they're a prisoner to transcending it up to at least seeing that life's a tragedy and there's a lot of suffering, and what can we do? We can endure that suffering, and we can start to develop and see progress and meaning, and then we can also maybe develop a sense of love and romance for not only other people but ourselves and our environments, and then we can start to see some of the humor and the absurdity in some of our existence, and we can start to see how given what they have and where they came from, and hopefully trying to integrate all of this into a sense of, yeah, life's a miracle, I'm glad I'm here, like, let's go, let's do this, let's get motivated on the things that are important to me, let's overcome, let's search for knowledge and overcome the problems, let's heal the damage, let's build and take action that's going to leave a positive legacy. And so the final part of this diagram is these three circles, which are just sort of, I guess, peripheral aspects that I wanted to include. And again, the color coding matters here because the bottom circle is our resources, our temperament, and our genetics, and that's sort of the body part of these considerations, and it's asking the question, where you came from, and that's ultimately our genetics, our personality traits, some of our inherent um, what resources we might have. Are we born with a certain deficiency? All of those things, and then where you are now is kind of a again, these are all broad questions, and so your family, where you grew up, your community, your culture, in the present, in your present life, and then where are you going? That's going to have to deal with your ideology, your spirituality, and your faith. And so these are sort of like modifiers that you want to keep in mind because they're going to influence these certain elements in ourselves. Our where we came from is going to influence our body. Where we are now is going to influence our heart. Where where we think we're going is going to influence our will. And being able to ask those questions and figure it out is going to influence our transcendence. And so I hope this kind of makes sense. Or I hope maybe it's starting to make sense. This is kind of my first time trying to articulate this model, and I hope to continue to try to exploit this out. And so to kind of hit the rest of the points, too much chaos is going to lead to anxiety. Uh, and the vicious expression of chaos is what I call disarray, where it's it's beyond chaos. I tried to think of a word that's beyond chaos, which was sort of hard. Um, but whenever there's too much anxiety or too much complexity, that's going to impact our shadow, and that's going to give us anxiety. When we have too much realization in excess, that's going to look like perfectionism. And ultimately, what that's going to do, and that's going to insert delusions into our shadow, and that's gonna expand our shadow via delusion. Uh, when we have too much order, the excess of order is compulsion, and that can be from our parents, from our environment, from our government. Quite frankly, it could be anything. Uh, Without proper ethics, relationships, negotiations, and systems, order can become compulsion, and that constriction right here can feed into and expand our shadow. Uh, Finally, too much actualization in excess becomes stubbornness, and what stubbornness will do is feed into the narcissism aspect of ourselves and expand our shadow in that way. And so ways to practical ways to counteract these four issues, if you are experiencing them, is, you know if we're in a position where we're being narcissistic, we tend to move and express ourselves in excess. So we're exercising our will and our integrity without considering maybe um, without realizing maybe other people's will and integrity as well. And so being what you can do is go look to the opposite side of the box here, and so connecting with others or connecting to different ideas and learning about different ideas can help balance out personal expression. Okay, and I hope that makes sense. You can kind of, and the same goes for recreation and adventure. If you're struggling with anxiety, uh, if you're struggling with the call to adventure and to slay the dragon, um, and you're struggling to have an adventure, well, perhaps try and reflect on the particular adventure you're going on, and also perhaps add elements of organization. And that could mean other people, that could just mean adding certain parameters, because to tackle the task of creativity, ultimately creativity thrives within per, a certain limitations. All great music is like that, and so it plays into finding the balance of order and chaos, realizations and actualizations, love and will, integrity and transcendence. We want to be able to integrate all eight of these aspects, honestly, and that will be our virtuous natural expression of our soul. And so that is sort of my overall theory. Um, Sorry if I rambled a bit. Again, like I said, this is one of the first times I'm trying to articulate this diagram out, but I really want to, tie it back to, I'm learning all of these different theories in my counseling training, and so this honestly makes it easier for me to understand and to help map out what I'm actually learning from all these other different schools of thought. And I think the basing it on the four elements is quite universal. I think the mind, body, heart, and spirit axis aligns well with the academically approved insight, action, internal, external axes. And so just kind of extrapolating out, adding the other dimensions of chaos and order, realization and actualization. I hope to use this tool. Perhaps it's its own sort of integral theory of counseling, uh, but I hope to kind of keep improving this in the future, and hopefully you guys may have found this helpful or interesting. I would love to maybe like apply different situations. Perhaps you guys have different questions about it. I can try to use this chart to maybe answer questions or help make videos about it. About maybe how you actually go about cultivating um, these character virtues, how you go about balancing, how you go about cycling through the four main quests. So, thank you guys for listening. Again, my name's Spencer Thorne. This is the Mind Alliance, and I hope you guys have a great day.